Righty, good morning, everybody. We are here right now. It is just myself, but might have a few people jump on in a few minutes. So we're going to go through some different news, some different notes. We are at a different location today in Atlanta. Um, don't know if I can tell you exactly where right now, so we'll leave that be for this moment. But we got some interesting news that we're going to get to as we are winding down March already, if you can believe that. We're about to be into April. Spring has started, even if the weather doesn't feel that way, as we are technically in spring. Kind of hard to believe after the winter months, right? But hey, that's where we're at. So we're going to get into some of these notes. We're going to start with Delaware. The very first state, which is also going to bring us our first story of this week. The state's House of Representatives voted for two bills, not one, but two, which would legalize possession for personal use and set up a retail market. Representative Ed Owiski is the driving force behind the legislation and believes this year may be the year the bill becomes a law. We've got some new members, he says. We have some new energy. I think a lot of people realize that I'm just not going to let go of this. I'm going to keep digging. I'm going to keep moving, try to push forward, make this a reality. The bill now moves to the state Senate, where the Health and Social Service Committee cleared the bill earlier this week. So just a couple of days ago, this bill was cleared and is in the state Senate. See where we can go from there. So that's some good news to start off with from the very first state in Delaware. Next, we go to Maryland, which we're going to stay up there in that mid-Atlantic. Maryland's making progress on legislation to set up a retail cannabis market. The state's House passed a bill late last week, so around Thursday or Friday, and it's an implementation bill, which now heads to the Senate, which is working on its own bill. If the common language can be agreed upon on both of these, the sales could begin as early as summer, so we're talking 2 months away. Literally, if Maryland can get past all this, June, July, they could be ready to go with a retail cannabis market in Maryland. So that's big news starting there with them. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit. While we see if anybody else comes on, we're going to go into the Biden budget, which, as we know, we've talked a lot about Biden, different things he's been doing, from incremental steps, as we've said multiple times here. Of course, we're talking about the movement, so to speak, of expungements and whatnot, even though we know that it's the minor stuff. Nothing from the federal president, nobody on the federal level is going to get it wiped off their record. They're not getting out. They're not going to have this erased. These are just minor, small amounts, which of course is going to be that 0.03 and less. So let's see where he's going now, because some things have been mentioned about him this week. For example, they released a budget proposal last week. There were both good news and bad news for cannabis advocates such as ourselves, such as those listening, watching right now. The document retains the appropriation section that prevents the Department of Justice, the DOJ, from interfering in state legal medical marijuana programs. Okay. So what that's basically going to do is the DOJ cannot stop the state legal programs. They're kind of in a holding pattern as this moves a little bit forward. It also retains the provision that prevents the District of Columbia, DC, from setting up a cannabis market. Okay, so wait. Love to get some feedback there, because you've got the Department of Justice, which cannot interfere with state legal medical programs, but it retains the provision that prevents the District of Columbia from setting up a cannabis market. So you're telling me DC can still do the medical, but they can't set up retail, they can't set up cultivation. Any of this stuff is not going to be allotted. So of course, this is just the opening in the budget discussion, so the language could be altered, deleted over the course of the year. Still got to wait and see. So basically what's going to happen there is it starts the discussion, it starts the topic, which is wonderful. But now it's going to bounce back and forth. You're going to get the rhetoric, you're going to get people editing it, adding to it, trying to change the verbiage here and there before it actually goes into pass. So we're talking months, a year, maybe even next year's session before we even go any further. So it'll be something interesting to keep our eyes on for sure, because we're not at this moment going to tell which way it's going to go. Is it going to move forward? Is it going to put some stuff on hold? But again, it's starting a discussion, which right now is what is so important, what's valuable, what's vital for this industry, and at least we are discussing it and trying to move forward. So we'll have to see what happens there. Now, this is something that's interesting. We're going to talk about Atlantic City, but we've talked about Vegas. We've talked about a few other places. A cannabis consumption lounge and dispensary to open in Atlantic City. So we know that they're doing this currently. Well, I don't think it's currently because it's not open until April, which, like we know, is 2 weeks away, basically, if even that, less than that. They will be consumption lounges in Vegas, but now we're looking at Atlantic City. It's going to create a new tourism economy around the cannabis. Is this a gamble, though, that Atlantic City is going to be willing to make? That's going to be the question. 2 medical cannabis dispensaries and 2 consumption lounges are expected to open this summer. So we don't have a date. Could that be June, July, August? Not sure. Sometime in that time frame. As we know, Vegas is supposed to open one in April. The cannabis lounges are an effort to attract people to tourist the city for a different experience outside of Atlantic City, the boardwalk, the gambling, all of those things that are current. So they're waiting to see where that will progress. Now, McKinley, director of constituent services and special projects for Atlantic City, said, we will be in the East Coast hub for cannabis. So if Vegas is the West Coast, can Atlantic City now be the East Coast version of that? Be interesting, as we said, because you've already got the tourists there, you've got the gambling, you've got multiple things there, but now are they going to be looking into doing the dispensaries, the consumption lounges, the retail, all of that? Could that now go to Atlantic City and be Vegas East? Maybe that's a stretch, but you get the idea. Added that people can't smoke outdoors and can't smoke in casinos. Now, you can smoke outdoors in Vegas. The casino part, I don't recall. I don't think you can. There might be a few older casinos in Vegas that are allotting it. The ones that we were in recently did not. So we want to make sure that our consumption lounges are safe and friendly, and they are state-of-the-art lounges where they can enjoy cannabis in Atlantic City. So kind of go back and recap that. Vegas, you'll see it walking down the streets. You'll see people smoking outside before they go into the casinos, the hotels. Atlantic City saying that you can't do that. You can't smoke outside, but we're going to have a lounge where you can safely come in, consume, probably have some drinks, consume the cannabis. Maybe they do hookahs, other things like that. So they're going to allow that, but once you head out those doors to go back outside, that's where it's going to stop. So that's going to be something that we'll have to wait and see, because we're still waiting to hear the feedback on what's going on in Vegas. We know that they're looking at opening a hotel on top of multiple consumption lounges. I haven't heard anything further yet on the progression of that. I'll need to reach out to a few people I know that live in Vegas, see if that's progressed. I think that would be something that would be very interesting, something that could be very good for the industry. We need the people to be in a safe space, to be able to ask questions, make sure that they are getting what's proper for them in terms of dosage, especially if it's something you haven't used before and you're starting to experiment into it, dabble into it. A consumption lounge is perfect for these individuals because they can make sure that they're in a safe environment, that they are getting safe product, and that overall their well-being is highly important to these lounges, to where we're not going to have issues of back house lounging, back alley lounging, things that could just be detrimental for this business. But it's come a long way and has a long way to still go. Now, something else talking about the DOJ that I think is rather interesting, definitely want to talk on. This past week, the DOJ files FCA compliant against major pharmacy retailers. Okay, now think about that one for a minute. Stop, let that sink in. The Department of Justice is going to file the FCA complaint against pharmacy. That's interesting. So we talked about how Big Pharma is stopping this, or wanting to stop it from progressing further. Now, we've seen some changes, yes. We've seen where some companies, and I'm not going to name them because I can't remember off the top of my head, unfortunately, they're now interested in it. They are now looking at, of course, how they're going to make money out of it. But also, making the money means that they're going to be able to sell to their customers. They're going to be able to allow cannabis to be used medically in the right provisions, which have not been set up yet. Let's restate that. This is not finalized. The discussion has been talked about, how some big pharma can get involved in this. So we're still waiting to see that happen, okay? But March 13th, 2023, DOJ announced that it filed a complaint against Rite Aid. Okay. Rite Aid, as we know, is a very big company in the pharmaceutical game. You've got Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, okay? Now, somebody would have to give me a little bit more on this because I don't remember as well. Should have talked to my sister who used to work for them. I believe Rite Aid is now filed in with Walgreens. So Rite Aid itself may no longer be there as a company, to the best of my knowledge, but they're still available. They're still tied in an umbrella company, so to speak. Now, remember, they're one of the largest pharmaceutical chains. This was filed under False Claims Act, which is the FCA, and Controlled Substance Act. According to the DOJ press release, between May 2014 and June 2019, 5-year span, almost 5 years ago now, Rite Aid allegedly filled at least hundreds of medical prescriptions that did not have legit medical purpose. So they're out there making these prescriptions available, filling them when, okay, don't have the details, so let's think about this. They didn't have a prescription from a doctor. They didn't have a legal prescription from a doctor. Or these people that they're filling for maybe had no reason to have this medication except for the fact that, guess what? They just kind of wanted it and they found a way to get it. So there's multiple layers there that are going to be discussed, delved into, and brought up, I'm sure, in a court setting, since there has been an FCA compliant filed against them. Now, these prescriptions that did not have a legitimate medical purpose were not for medical accepted indication or were not issued in the usual course of professional practice. So now that goes back to did they not have the proper documentation? Did they not have a note from the doctor that was giving them the prescriptions? What exact terminology are we talking about here when they say that it was not a legit medical purpose and were not accepted? That's what I would really like to know. And I don't know enough about the pharmaceutical industry in terms of saying how that would happen for them. You know, could it have been where initially they had a proper prescription, but once that time period ran out, once they did not have a refill available, did Rite Aid still give them the refill? These things I don't know. These are things that are going to come out over time. I'm going to do some research in it, talk to some people I know in the pharmacy, see if they know what's happened here. I've got a couple of friends that have worked in the pharmaceutical field, see if they have any ideas that they can share about this, because this is, I'm sure, multiple layers in that onion, of course. Now, it goes on to say that the prescriptions allegedly included excessive quantities of opiates such as oxycodone and fentanyl. We've seen where fentanyl is a huge issue here in the U.S. We've seen where it's coming in the Southwest, it's coming in the Southeast, it's coming in all over the nation, and it's being mixed in with multiple things. We have a huge fentanyl problem. We know that. We have a huge opiate problem. We know that as well. And here is a big pharma company that has been, according to the DOJ report here, they've been helping to facilitate that. This comes on the heels of the announcement last week by the Associate Attorney General, Vanetta Gupta, of the creation of the Opiate Epidemic Civil Litigation Task Force, which aims to steer the DOJ civil litigation efforts related to the opiate epidemic. So the question is, now that this has been set up in terms of a task force, how much more is going to come out? How much more is going to be researched? How much more are we going to find out that, you know what, Rite Aid may not have been the only company that was doing this? Question then is, are there back alley pharmaceuticals? I'm sure there are. You know, it'd be crazy to think that in this nation that we don't have some black market, some back alley. We've already discussed it in terms of if we don't get things in terms of the scheduling, if we don't get things in terms of making cannabis medically safe and effective for consumers, they're going to buy black market like they've done for decades. Why do you think places like New York are wanting people who have previous convictions to step forward and get these consumption lounges, to get these dispensaries, to get these retail shops? They know about the business. They've even done it, although illegally, they've done it successfully before on the black market. Promise you, opioids, fentanyl, oxycodone is being sold as well on the black markets. And I'm sure, like we see here, even though Rite Aid was doing that as a pharmacy company, I'm sure there has to be some black market pharmaceutical companies out there. We know we have it in multiple other different areas, whether it be, not going into it, but of course, as we've seen over the last several years, what's happened with abortions. People are worried about the fact that with that becoming not legal now, you're going to have individuals go into these back alley markets like they have before, to where it's not going to be safe for them. That's one of the major concerns. Same idea here. So this is a story that we're going to have to follow. We're going to have to keep up on. We're going to have to see where it goes. And I have no information on it, but I'm pretty safe to say that this is not going to be the only company we're going to find has done these things. I think that's pretty safe to say. Now, interesting, next here. The SEC, and when I say SEC, I'm not talking about the South End into the sports, football, baseball, basketball rhetoric, even though it is March Madness. But the SEC, which is the Security and Exchange Commissions, okay, on March 16th, so last Thursday, announced charges against American Patriot Brand Inc., APB. It's a cannabis cultivation and distribution company, as well as the CEO and 5 other entities and individuals for allegedly participating in a scheme to siphon millions of dollars in investment funds. They raised over 100 investors in order to enrich themselves. So they're going out to whoever it may be, grants, individuals they know that had the money. You know, it doesn't exactly say where this came from, but what they did is they used the idea of cannabis in terms of, don't know if it was for investing in retails, investing in cultivation, dispensaries, whatever it might be. But essentially, the scheme, they did siphon millions, kind of like Ponzi's. They siphoned millions in investment funds that they raised not for these companies, for them, for themselves only. Now, according to the SEC, APB and some of its senior executives fabricated business profits and prospects to entice investors with falsehood that in the end left investors with essentially worthless securities. So they could have been selling a stock portfolio, some bonds. They were having people buy into this business in terms of probably saying, hey, you're going to be a part owner, you're going to be a percent, you're going to get return on your investment. Whatever it might be. They might have just saying ROIs, don't know for sure. But they fabricated the business profits. So they gave them a false P&L. They gave them a false graph showing here's where we're at, here's where we're going. With your money, we can get to this, in hopes of saying, hey, let's grow together, let's build a company. But all they were doing was growing their own portfolio. They were putting this money in themselves, not into a business. So they were falsifying all of this. SEC compliant alleges that APB funneled millions of dollars in investor proceeds into the executive's personal accounts. So not only were they stating, hey, we're going to use this money to help this business grow, they then took it into their own accounts, not into a business account and then siphoned from there. They literally put it right into their own business, their own personal business. So their own private bank accounts. It further alleges that APB spent tens of thousands on executive personal expenses. Sorry, well, I got my coffee a little bit dry this morning. So think about that for a minute. Tens of thousands on executive personal expenses. So this money that was supposed to be used towards, as we're just guessing here, a retail store, a dispensary, maybe it was even research on cannabis. Not sure what all they had falsified to say what they're going to do. These were personal expenses. So this money was being used to pay for business trips, allegedly, vacations, possibly rental homes, cars, any expenditure that you could think that they could have been doing to have fun themselves, so to speak, a vacation themselves. That's probably what they're doing because they're saying personal expense. So nowhere does it say that they falsified and said, hey, here we go, we're going to do 40,000 on research, we're going to do 60,000 towards a dispensary. This was their own personal expense. They went straight to them and them only. The compliant charges APB and other defendants with violating the anti-fraud provision of federal security laws and seeks injunction relief with prejudgment interest, civil penalties, and the officers and directors bars against 2 individual defendants. So this is going to be something that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on because this is going to go deep. This is going to be far reaching. This is going to, I would say, very safe to say that these individuals are probably going to go to federal prison for this, as they should. It'd be interesting to see what happens next and how much money they truly took, if that's ever going to be exposed to us, and how many were involved. Is it 15? Is it 20? Is it 100? Is it 3 or 4? I don't know for sure because, like we stated earlier in the discussion there, it's saying 5 other entities and individuals, but it doesn't tell us a collective total of individuals. So this could be 5 other partners involved. This could be sub companies involved. This could be multiple layers because, like we said, the CEO and 5 other entities and individuals. Like we said there, is that individuals included in the 5? So is it a 5 collective group, individuals and entities, or just listing as 5? So we'll have to keep that story looking at it, see what happens, see where it goes. Now, this next one is more based here in Georgia, and I think this one's rather interesting. I was hoping that we could get a little bit of, feedback on it, but what they are looking at, and I'd love to get to it with Chris, possibly. This is something I found late last night. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get with Chris today. The Georgia Supreme Court, okay, it's stating, should they reconsider allowing lawyers to represent clients following Georgia law? Now, my first indication, of course, is yes, and I'm going to read to you some of that information as to why. I don't have a time frame on this, but I'm hoping this will go forward. There may be no area of the law where it's more important to have legal counsel than the United States cannabis industry. I think that's safe to say we all agree on that because we've seen what happens legally. We've seen what happens when people don't have their business set up, their DBAs, they don't do everything proper. You can not only lose your business, you can lose other things, your homes, your stock, the money that you have in the bank. You could lose a lot of your livelihood right now because the way cannabis is looked at, being on the Schedule 1. Cannabis is not set up the way it should be, where it needs to be. And we know that. And that's one reason we do this show. That's one reason why we have the guest on here, why this is such a vital and important thing right now in this nation. The cannabis industry has developed within the context of conflicting and evolving federal and state laws. So think about that back for a minute. Conflicting and involving. So that means they're going against each other. Right hand says one, left hand says one. The old idea of if mom doesn't get me what I want, I'm going to go ask dad. There's your conflicting part. Evolving. Okay. We know it's evolving in certain regards, but not evolving to where it needs to be. We're evolving here and there incrementally, a little bit, but we know for us to get where we need to be for the research, for the medical end, for the recreational, to help people, we've got to get off schedule one, number one. We've got to get more research. We've got to get, like, we've got going in some of these schools across the nation right now, education on it. That's vital. That's important. That's huge. So we're going back and forth, and we know that for a while, unfortunately. And in business industry, we must navigate a wide array of legal challenges. We know that no matter what it is, whether it be a smoke shop, whether it be a bar, whether it be a beauty shop, all of these have regulations and legal ramifications of legislation that we know. And if you're starting a business, you're going to get legal advice. That's the right thing you should do. We need that in the cannabis too. So to continue forward, these challenges extend to those businesses that provide services or otherwise interact with cannabis companies. Now, remember back a few months ago when we talked about a person involved in the cannabis industry who was a writer for websites, for magazines. They were having problems with banking and getting loans because they weren't selling the cannabis. They were involved in the industry. That's it. No way did they have a brick and mortar store. They were not selling it to anyone. They were simply writing articles, educating people, and they were having problems. So that's where the otherwise interact with cannabis companies comes. All of this means that people dealing with cannabis issues tend to have a lot of questions. We know that. Somebody like Dr. Rashad, he's got the answers, okay? The rest of us are learning from individuals like him. The rest of us are doing our research and learning the business as we go because we don't have all the answers, but we do have individuals who do have been in this brilliantly for years, safely for decades. They are the ones who really know. They're the ones that are teaching us. That's how we're moving forward in this. So while lawyers may not be the answer to all the world's problems, we know that, they sure are important. I would change that to vital. Not just important, they're vital to addressing the complex web of laws governing the cannabis industry. I think we could all agree with that, and that's safe to say. We've seen all the layers. We've seen all the stuff that, for example, you can't cross it across state lines. You can't, I believe it was Washington that we talked about, where you can't exchange the cannabis for money, but it's legal for you to have it. So a shop, a t-shirt shop, let's say, could give you some free with buying a shirt or a hat, but they can't take the money for it. So that right there is part of the web of the laws governing the cannabis industry. They're all over the place. They're not set up consistently throughout the nation for every person, for every race, for every background. We're not all equal on that, unfortunately, and that is wrong, vitally wrong. As a most basic and relevant example, okay, what is a citizen of Georgia to do if, say, she is seeking legal counsel available herself for Georgia's medical cannabis law when federal law appears to directly to contrary statements of it, even though the federal government has made it clear that it will not enforce its prohibition except under rare and specific circumstances. So without that lawyer, how is this individual going to be able to get their answers that they need to make sure that A, they're safe, B, they're doing it legal, and they don't have anything come back on them? We've seen cases, I believe it was Michigan. Person had a legal shop to sell CBD, cannabidiol, to sell these things, and they went in and raided them, even though he's got the legal paperwork. So we're seeing that there's a lot of conflicting reports from all sides. Now, when faced with that question in June of 2021, State Court of Georgia got a little bit here on the documents, but we'll go into this first. A change of the Georgia rules of professional conduct proposed by the State Bar of Georgia and held that Georgia lawyers were prohibited. Okay, wait a minute. They were prohibited from counseling and assisting clients in Georgia's new legal medical cannabis industry. All right. So I want to open up a smoke shop. I want to, maybe even though very small, we now have where medically people can get stuff. Margie, welcome. You're coming in at a very interesting time because I'm going to backtrack a little bit for you. There is a debate right now that's actually up where the Georgia Supreme Court is asking, hey, should we let lawyers now represent clients in this cannabis industry? So it's up for discussion. And one of the things I just mentioned, for example, Georgia lawyers were prohibited from counseling and assisting clients in Georgia's newly legal medical cannabis industry. All right. That was a change of the Georgia rules of the professional conduct proposed by the State Bar of Georgia, June of 2021. So, like I just mentioned to them. So, for example, okay, let's say you wanted to go and open up a store here in Georgia. Maybe you're going to help get people who have the medical card, which is allotted. We know it's a small amount, but allotted, right? So you cannot seek legal advice of how I'm going to do this? How does that make sense?
Not really. It doesn't, does it?
You know, so for the people who may not have been on in the last 2 weeks, which hopefully they were, but of course you're tied into the business and distribution. So you're telling me that your owners never sought out legal advice before they opened the dispensary? Or I'm sorry, not the dispensary.
Of course they did. Yeah.
Of course. So you guys are doing it throughout the nation. So of course there's another layer there, because not only do you all have to make sure what you're doing is proper and legal in Georgia, you have to go through the other states.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, it's crazy because actually today there's a hearing yesterday in Gwinnett County about a marijuana company trying to go against us for selling Delta 8. And so it actually went over time yesterday. And so they're back in the courtroom this morning.
And they probably will be tomorrow and next week. And
hopefully it lasts, until they say absolutely not. This is awesome.
Right. Right. But, because this is what I just don't understand, though, is this is great. There's still a bunch more we're going to cover on it. But yes, people do open businesses without seeking legal advice. But why would you, especially in this business?
Yeah.
Everything would be taken from you like that.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been the right answer to a wrong question proposed by the State Bar, they're saying, but the result led to confounding results for Georgia lawyers and its citizens seeking access to medically made legal by the legislator and the governor. So, it's just, and one of the points that we made earlier is one of the big reasons they're saying it is because, and as we all know, there's a lot of different layers to this. There's a lot of, state yes, federal no. Federal says okay to this, state says this. You can't go across state lines. So there's a lot of legality here.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to have somebody represent me.
Absolutely. If you don't, then you're going to be in trouble one way or the other.
Oh, right. And I'm sure that you've heard these stories, and we've seen it too. These individuals who didn't start off seeking legal counsel at the beginning, but do everything they need to for their DBA, for their business. Then they try to backtrack. Either A, they're going to spend more money, or B, they're losing their business. And when you lose
sad,
it,
but it's true. Yeah. No, they don't allow you to get that back.
Correct. So this is vital for us because the Federal Controlled Substance Act, the CSA, has 5 categories of classification for schedules. You know about those?
Nope. Hit me.
Okay, because this is something I just kind of delved into last night. So it's regulated drugs based on drugs' potential for abuse, acceptance medically, their treatment and internal treatments. So as we know, marijuana is Schedule 1, right? The most dangerous category of narcotics under the federal law, which we've got to get changed. We have to. Mm-hmm. We know that. So under that, manufacturing, dispensing is a violation of the CSA because it's Scheduled 1. As in conspiring with another to do so, the CSA will make it a crime to either knowingly open, lease, rent, use, or maintain any place where permanently or temporarily for purpose of manufacturing, distributing, or using a controlled substance.
Mm-hmm.
There's your 1. 2, manage or control any place, whether it be permanent or temporary, either as a owner, lease, agent, employee, occupant, knowingly and intentionally renting, leasing, profit for, or making available for use, with or without compensation, the place for the purpose of unlawfully manufacturing, storing, distributing, or using a controlled substance, albeit or abetting another, is violating of the CSA, in itself a crime, and is knowingly assisting the violator after the fact. So to me, it sounds like you've basically set up all these layers to where the answer is no. You pretty much CYA'd yourself on all of it, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally looking at it, any place, permanently or temporarily. So you can't have it for 60 days, 30 days. It doesn't matter. Knowing or unknowing, for compensation or without compensation. So what realm have they not covered to where they're saying that this is a violation?
Yeah.
And it can result in fines and imprisonment. Anyone who conspires to commit an offense under the CSA is subject to the same penalties as the offender themselves. So if you do the offense and I know about it, we're both getting the same punishment. They range from 1,000 to 2 million. Okay.
Cheap.
Oh yeah, 2 million. I got that. Where do you want to go? You want to see how many of these crimes we can affect today? Why not? I got time. Prison sentence will range from less than a year, in jail, to 10 years.
And that's for each offense as well.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So let's think about that. That's a good point. You brought that up. So each offense. So if I leased it and I got compensated, that would be 2 offenses, wouldn't it? Oh, and the fact that I'm knowing. So now I'm at 3 offenses. So I'm already at maybe 6 million in 60 years, or 30 years. Day at the beach, right? No problem.
Right. A little bit, maybe a little bit.
Right. And in addition of traditional and civil penalties, the government can seize your property, which is used or intended to be used in any of these manners. All of these are violations of the CSA. So if all these are violations, I definitely need legal representation to make sure I'm doing it right from the beginning, shouldn't I?
Mm-hmm.
So approximately 40 states have permitted the manufacturing, distribution, or sale of marijuana to some extent. This open split between federal and state laws has raised the question about which law controls the manufacturing, the distribution, or the sale of it in the state, which is permitted by state law. I mean, think about it. We probably haven't even really delved into it. Look at how many things we've already gone, I have no idea.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how quick could that just shut you down?
Mm-hmm. Oh, very quickly. As soon as they make a determination, if there's anything that's, not legal in a place, then they can go and raid it immediately. As soon as it's passed, in that minute, they can have troops on the ground and ready.
Well, and not just that, I think it was Michigan. I might be wrong on it. Did you hear about that one? I think it was just a normal CBD store in Michigan that got raided, even though they had all of their state legal documents. They raided them and took everything from them and put him in jail.
I did not hear about that then.
Yes. I'll have to look into that.
In Michigan, it's legal.
Right. But there was something about one of the products that they said was not. So they raided him and I think they literally walked in with about 20 different officers into that one shop.
Makes sense. They don't go in lightly.
No, they don't.
Not at all.
I've been in a few clubs when they've done the raids, and it's a sight to see. It really is. Because when you're ready for it, you're not ready for it.
Yeah, you're never ready for it.
No. So as a general manager, federal law trumps conflicting state laws, which we know. The Supreme Court has upheld the federal government's authority to criminalize marijuana, not without standing, contrary to state law. And that's because it's Scheduled 1. Now, here's where we get to the Georgia medical cannabis law, which, gosh, I think that's kind of tricky in itself. The Georgia Access to the Medical Cannabis Commission describes the Georgia law as much more limited than some other states. Much more? Hugely more. Exponentially more. 1,000 times more.
Yeah.
The state does little more than allowing registered people to buy and possess low THC oil form. And that's what? 5% THC by weight.
3.
No. Is it? Yeah, you're right. It is 3 because it says right here.
It's
this oil
0.3.
contains CBD and up to 5 THC, but it's 0.3. That's right. So that article's wrong. See right there. Now, if that was given at 0.5 and somebody does it, now they're in violation because
correct.
They looked it up on a website instead of talking to a lawyer. So right there, and I did not do that on purpose, by the way, but you're right. After I read, but that could have put somebody in trouble right there because they read what was on the internet and it was wrong. Ignorance is not bliss.
No,
didn't we all learn that from dating sites? Never trust the internet.
No, never. Not even once.
No. But as we know, a select number of licensed producers can grow the cannabis that will eventually be turned into this low THC. As in many other states, the application and licensing process is strict. Well, it should be strict. I agree with that. But should it be limited? That's the question. Should we only have 4 or 5 or 6? No. We should have multiple so that everybody can. And you have to have your registration card. Now, what else was interesting about that registration card that they're fighting now? You have a medical registration card. Guess what? You're not supposed to own a handgun.
Oh, that's going to be a problem.
It is. Now, I think it was Mississippi.
Especially in Kennesaw.
Oh, 100% Kennesaw. Oh, geez, yeah. And I'm 5 minutes from there, so I know. Believe me. It is for those who don't know, it is actually a law in the books that you are supposed to, in your residence, own a handgun.
Required, not supposed to. Required.
Well, the only reason I'm saying supposed to is because they don't go, "Can I see your gun?"
I mean,
they don't go to the door.
Why would you? That's how you find. That's how you find out.
Correct, but yes, you're right. It is required under the law in Kennesaw to own a handgun, and that's not with a permit. And yes, I know that Georgia is now, a permitless state and open carry and all that stuff. This was decades before that even became a thought.
Decades.
I think this law came in, 86, roughly?
Roughly.
So you know that. And of course, now this proposed amendment of the Georgia Rules of Professional Conduct submitted in September of 2019. And here we are, almost in April of 2023. And where are we? Not much has changed. Now, this would allow Georgia lawyers to consult clients regarding conduct that is lawful under the Georgia law, but may violate the law of another jurisdiction. Okay, that seems legit and responsible, right? We're going to show you what the Georgia says and what others might say, which is good. The motion to amend was made in context of the Georgia law allowing cannabis production, even though cannabis is a Scheduled 1 under the Federal Controlled Substance Act. So how vital could this be? Now, the response, here's where it could be interesting. The response of the Georgia Supreme Court. The court recognized the desire of certain Georgia lawyers to participate in the state's new medical cannabis industry. The court noticed that at the outset, however, the proposed amendment is not limited to conduct related to low THC. Indeed, the proposed amendment is quite broad and might well apply to a wide range of conduct constituting a crime under the federal law that simply has no correlation with the state criminal sanctions.
Okay.
The point has been needed to death, as it says, concluded, but the court has long prohibited Georgia lawyers from counseling and assisting clients in commissions of criminal acts. The passage of the Georgia statute to permit and regulate the conduct that constitutes federal crimes does not change the long-standing principle. So,
Yeah, but a principle is one thing, a law is another.
correct. But aren't we, again, conflicting ourselves?
I mean, absolutely. Welcome to the US.
Yeah, pretty much. We've seen that over the last several years. But anyways, we could go on for days about that one. But, you're literally sitting there saying that I need legal representation. They can tell me what's legal here in the state and in others, but we're not going to allow you to assess clients of the commission of a criminal act. But yet at the same point, if somebody commits a crime, they get a lawyer. And if one cannot be afforded, we provide one for you. So aren't you, by giving state representation, aren't you providing someone who is assisting a client in a criminal act?
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like you can do it prior to the fact, only after is what
Right.
it sounds like. They're trying
So,
not to prevent you from committing something and inform you. Instead, they're saying, "Oh, we're hands off until you get caught, and then we'll defend you."
so is it better to ask forgiveness than permission?
Well, that's exactly what they're telling you to do.
Yeah, because they want the money.
Well, yeah, through the court
Right.
system. Absolutely.
Right. The court's strict refusal to allow an amendment of the rules sent shockwaves through the cannabis field, which it should. After all, nearly every state bar, when faced with similar questions, had permitted at least some role for
Mhm.
lawyers to advise or assist clients engaging in state marijuana acts. So these other states are, but we're not getting on board with this.
Yep, basically that's what they're saying.
While it's worth a debate, we're not aware of any court of last result reaching the conclusion. So we're years away from an acceptance, if there will be one. We believe the Georgia Supreme Court is the venue most likely to break new ground on this issue. But are they? Are they really? I mean,
Definitely not.
we've seen where it's gone on the recreational end. We've seen the problems that it has with the cultivation, the idea of the farmers who are going to grow it. We're still in legal battles right now on that.
Mhm.
Vegas, Mississippi, Oregon, all these other places, they've had this for years now. Colorado's had it for what? Just over a decade? But we're going to be the venue that's going to break the ground on the issue. I think we're the venue that's trying to put concrete over top of the ground that's been broken for cultivation.
Mhm.
So they're saying that perhaps the answer lies in close reading of the Georgia Supreme Court opinion. One hand, one can interpret it as a wholesale prohibition of Georgia lawyers advising and assisting clients from engaging in the act. On the other hand, it does not explain the court's focus on the proposed amendment. Perhaps its proposed amendment was limited to allowing lawyers to advise clients engaged in medical activities expressly permitted by the Georgia law. Well, I didn't see anywhere where it said you can only get representation for medical. Did you?
Nope.
So again, right hand, left hand, we don't know.
Mhm.
So, I mean, what is going to happen? There's something perverse about providing and creating a state regulatory framework and then prohibiting the citizens from using it.
You're right.
So I don't know. I mean, it's something that, and I'm literally, you probably have an idea where I'm at. I'm literally 100 yards away from the state capitol right now. I'm so close to them. I wish I could go in there and try to let them see this, but what we've got to do is come together, speak to our representatives, and guess what? Peacefully, but you have that right for peaceful protest. We need to have people out there with signs in front of the Capitol asking for what they want, why they want it, and when they want it. They wanted it 6 years ago, not tomorrow. It needs to happen now. But there's something that I wanted your take on because it came in after the fact, which is fine. But did you hear about this? And we talked about it. The DOJ files an FCA complaint against a pharmacy retailer.
Mm-mm.
So March 13th, last week, basically, they
Mhm.
announced that it filed a complaint against Rite Aid,
Really? For
which
what?
is one of the largest companies, pharmaceutical chains, as we know. Now, what they did is they filed a false claim act, the FCA, that between May 2014 and June 2019, they allegedly filled at least hundreds of medical prescriptions that did not A, have a legit medical purpose, B, were not medically accepted, and C, were not issued in the usual course of professional practice. And these included, but not exclusive to, opioids such as oxycodone and fentanyl.
Interesting. I did not hear that. I wonder how that's going to play out, because those are two of the most addictive substances on the planet. And if they weren't going through the proper channels, then, that's really a huge error. And especially for 5 years for
Right.
one of the largest companies in that space, it's very suspicious.
Well, and here's something that's interesting. And my sister used to work for them, actually. So I'm going to discuss this with her later. But here in the state, as far as I can remember, Rite Aid's not around anymore. They've now merged into Walgreens.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those have gone away. So I'll be very interested to see.
So now that raises the question, A, is that why it went away? Because they were hoping to skirt away from these. Or B, does that mean now that, guess what? Walgreens could be in trouble if they merged with them, if that is actually now the parent company.
Well, it would depend on who was in charge at that point in
Right.
time. It doesn't get passed down. It's not like a car tag.
No, true. I mean, it's going to be more than anything, just, a slap on the hand, so to speak. But that should go to the idea that when you acquire a business, you're supposed to look into, do they owe anything in terms
Yeah,
of
but
that
you still, even if you look at that, if it was disguised properly, they wouldn't have been able to find it
Sure.
unless they had a forensic accountant.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. But it's just, this adds so many different levels to what if maybe, I mean, we're probably going to hear about this for a while, because what happened with it was the Associate Attorney General has started the creation of an opiate epidemic civil litigation task force. And I think this is the first one they're going after. So how many more are we going to find?
I mean, probably a lot. If you've seen any of the Netflix specials or Hulu specials on all of the, pill mill doctors and everything else. There was one up in the Northeast that I watched. There was one down in Louisiana that I watched. And the actual doctor himself from Louisiana was even on there and talking about how, oh, he was just doing his job.
Right.
And there was there was a guy who caught a doctor doing it after his son died of an overdose. There's been multiple. There's been a documentary about the Buckhead Triangle that I've watched, and I'm sure you have too. So, this is things where there were so many cracks and flaws in the system and zero checks and balances that it's going to be exploited because it happened, because it was already exploited.
Well, the one thing that I'd like to do, and I need to talk to somebody in the pharmacy here. So it's saying that they didn't have the legit medical purpose, medically accepted, and it was not used properly. So the questions I have then, does that mean that the prescription
That means the doses,
out illegally?
that means that the prescription was not obtained legally from a doctor. It means that it not being for a medical purpose means that it was either too high of a dosage or too many pills. And then the other part of that is who is going to and how often it's prescribed. So if there's someone who is walking around, they shouldn't have an Oxycontin prescription, because you shouldn't be able to walk and take that medication.
Well, and one of these things that brings up a perfect example, and I don't know if I want to use the words. I see both stories, both sides. I've worked with or known a lot of people here, especially in Atlanta, who were professional wrestlers. They're hurt. They have, injuries.
There's a lot of other options now, though.
No, absolutely.
There's
I agree
a lot of
100%. But, we had one particular case where, this guy, he was always on the road, and the doctor gave him an open prescription. Didn't say, hey, come back, talk to me again. Let's follow up. When you need it, here, go get it. Yep. We could be looking at the same situation on some of these as well.
1,000%. And it's just laziness in the medical field.
100%. Because then these people are either selling it for a profit, or like you're saying, they're not using the proper dosage. They're just popping. Years ago when I had an injury, I think I was using, it was Percocet. And I'm not proud of this. I was popping 25 to 30 a day. Okay.
That is insanity.
Absolutely. And I stopped because one morning I had such a mood swing that I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I can't do this anymore because I saw, like I said, some of my friends who were wrestlers who were dying from doing these things. You know, and
That's
unfortunately,
one
nothing
of
else
well,
happened.
that's one of the main reasons that we carry kratom. And that's
Right.
one of the reasons that that is so popular, is because it allows people to take something where they have had previously bad experiences with addictive substances. And it's in the coffee and tea family. So it allows them to have something that is not an addictive substance that will give them that same, release of tension or energy boost or whatever they're looking for. There's different kinds. There's red, there's green, there's white. There's so many different kinds. Um, and so that's something where there's been things created to stop that. But unless you stop the doctors from prescribing it, you're going to be stuck in this loop. And so
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to hold the medical practice 100% responsible
Absolutely.
for everything that they do. And that surprisingly has not been the case in the US in a very long time.
Well, not just the case in the U.S., but unfortunately, like we talked about, at consumers, you have some individuals who don't either understand their mentality and their body well enough to look at the doctor and go, "I can't take that. I don't need to
They
take that.
also need a psych
Stop."
evaluation before they're prescribed these, and that's not part of the process.
No, because
You have
I
to be able to know if someone has addictive tendencies or an addictive
right.
personality before you give them an addictive substance.
Mhm.
And
'Cause
we
I remember,
don't do that properly. We don't take mental health seriously at all.
no, because I remember after the incident, like I told you with those perks, I had neck surgery, and I remember the doctor looked at me and goes, "Here's the prescription," and let's say it was a 30 day prescription or whatever it was. He goes, "But I'm going to go ahead and give you 90, so you just get it whenever you need it." And I looked at him, I said, "No, I'm coming back to you." And I said, "I'm not even taking the amount that you're giving me because I know what this has done to me before. And
Hmm.
this is not hey, I'm better than you, look at me type thing." I'm using that as an example that there's a lot of people who just say, "Okay." And they either say, "I'm going to keep taking it because the doctor said I can," or they're going to use it to sell it for monetary gains.
I mean, there's only two outcomes. It doesn't just
Right.
sit, it's a valuable asset. It doesn't just sit at someone's house in their, in their medicine cabinet.
Right.
It doesn't happen that way. So this is something I think we should take seriously, and that means that this industry should have a rise, and it should be allowed to thrive, and not limited, not restricted, not beaten with a stick to try to get people to move away from it. Not called voodoo, not called bad. Um, all of those things need to change.
Well, we've seen what it can do, A, because it is a natural plant, and B,
Been
because we
around for a
have,
long time.
correct, and we have the cannabinoid system in our bodies to begin with. That's how the receptors work. We need to get
CB1
off the
receptors
schedule.
are in our brain. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why we need this product to help people to get out of this opiate issue that we have in this nation.
Hmm.
It's vital. It's important. It's got to happen. But now, at the same point, since you were able to join us today, what do you guys got new? You got anything new down there? You just kind of want to discuss, because I see the Los Bravos sweatshirt on, but
Oh
hoodie.
yeah, you gotta rep our Mosley brothers for that at Buckhead Threads.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And we're
love
what,
them.
8 days away now?
Yeah, I think
Wait
so.
for
And
tomorrow.
let's go take a trip around the
Okay.
warehouse. Let's see what we got new this week. So hold on, let me grab my little sidekick real quick. For those of you who don't know, this is Daisy. She's my little warehouse buddy.
I'm trying to get you there on our Instagram as well so that they can kind of follow you.
Oh, all right. So let's grab our road dog. Let's head in. All right. So last week we talked about the koi brands. So we were able to actually get some of those and do some product testing by some of our in-house workers, which was phenomenal. As expected, they work just absolutely wonderful. Let's see. Oh, another thing that we got in, this is super exciting, very different, is going to be our foreign food section. So
Oh,
this is brand new now. We've got everything from squid and shrimp chips to we've got sweet basil, hot pot spicy. I mean, there's so many different flavors. The one thing that I want people to try, just because it sounds absolutely crazy, is right over here, and it's going to be lemon hot chicken Pepsi.
Well, I will say I will be at this location for the next 10 hours. So, if you need some samples done, I will be here ready to wait.
I am just very curious as to what that is going to taste like. There are some very interesting flavors over there, and zero of them have I ever seen before.
Right.
The other thing that we got in is going to be our signature line. So we do have those wraps, and again, and we do have the hand rolled cigars here, as well as we got in the Delta 8 products that do have that THCP. So that is going to be that psychedelic version of the THC, and it's a mild psychedelic, but it still does give you that euphoric feeling. When we come down our aisle here, we're gonna pass by all of the koi products that are being restocked right now. Another thing that we got in this week is going to be our flying horse. So these are going to be 5 grams. So this is the largest size that's available right now in any of our disposables. So this is going to have THCP, THCX. It's going to have hydroxy 11 and then THC. So these are going to be some blends. Each flavor is going to be a little bit different, and most of them are going to be a 2 flavor. So as you can see here, Pineapple Express and then Mayhem Grape, Pink Runts, and then Wedding Cake. And again, that's going to be in that 5 gram size. So extremely large, will last forever. So if you like a flavor, it's going to be a great one to try out. Another one that we didn't really talk about last week that we got in is going to be this Fuego brand. The Fuego brand has got some great disposables. These are going to be the 2 gram XL edition. This here is Pineapple Express. The good thing about this is if you see it lists on the packaging right here where it says sativa. Not all of the brands are going to list out whether it's going to be a sativa or an indica. So there you'll see it's sativa. And then right here, this ice cream cake, this is going to be an indica. So you can kind of see there what you're smoking and what effect you want to get. So some people are putting those out more now in the on the packaging as far as what strain it is, so that they can specify those.
But
But yeah, that's what we've got going on. We've got a lot of brands coming in. Game On is actually here today. We've got 6 brands visiting next week, so we're going to have a really busy time in the warehouse. We've got Hive and a few others coming in, so that's always exciting. So yeah, that's kind of what we've got going on, expanding the brand, bringing in new products, and then learning as much as we possibly can about the products that we have here already.
all right. Well, we were putting down there real quick, should have done that earlier, but putting the website again and the phone number. We've been putting these brands up on our Instagram and our foundation page as well. So hopefully we got consumers that are like, hey, I need that. And they're reaching out to you guys and getting it in their stores.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. And if anybody needs anything, you know how to reach us.
There we go. Well, I appreciate it again and look forward to having you again soon. And God, you got stuff like every week.
We do. We do have new stuff every week for sure.
You got the Christmas goodies every week of the year, I'll tell you.
Hey, when you work for Santa, that's how it rolls.
Yeah, see, I think I'm working for the Grinch or something because I'm getting the opposite end.
I'm delivering happiness every week. That's
There you go.
for sure.
That's the important part. Well,
All
guys,
right,
we
well,
look forward to next week. And then y'all have a great week, Margie. Thank you again for joining us. And we'll put your information up again on all of our sites. And you guys need anything, go to her. She's got what you need, and she can get it to your front door. I'm telling you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Appreciate you for coming by.
Bye.